What would it feel like? I mean, really feel like to soar over the vast, shimmering expanse of the Pacific, chasing history, pushing the absolute limits of, well, everything, human endurance, technology only to vanish. Just vanish into the profound, unknowable silence of the ocean. Take a moment and just picture yourself in that cockpit. You know, the rhythmic hum of those twin engines vibrating through your bones, the limitless horizon stretching out before you, maybe cloud banks looking like distant mountains.
Yeah.
How might that incredible blend of exhilaration, you know, the boundless freedom of flight and that ever-present shadow of vulnerability, how would that shape your decisions? Especially when you're facing such a vast unknown.
It's a powerful thought.
Today, we're embarking on an in-depth exploration, a real deep dive into one of aviation's most enduring and, frankly, captivating mysteries. It's a story that still echoes, doesn't it, after all these decades?
It really does. And our mission here, in this deep dive, isn't just to recount the established facts of Amelia Earhart's final flight. We've all heard those.
Right.
But it's more to ignite your own curiosity. We want to invite you, the listener, to reason with us step by step as we try to peel back the layers of this enigma.
Yeah, asking the questions.
Exactly. Exploring not just what happened, but really delving into why this particular story still grips our collective imagination after so many years. Maybe challenge some long-held assumptions along the way.
Sounds good. Hopefully guide people towards some fresh insights. Hashtag the last flight's promise. Okay, let's kick things off by setting the stage, because I think to truly grasp the monumental weight and the profound impact of Amelia Earhart's final fateful flight, we really need to appreciate her iconic status before 1937.
Absolutely critical.
She wasn't just, a skilled pilot. She was a global phenomenon, a household name. So from your perspective, what were the standout accomplishments that had already cemented her legendary status? What made her Amelia Earhart in the public's imagination back then in the 30s?
Well, what's truly remarkable about her career before 37 is this consistent pattern of just shattering barriers. The sheer audacity and the skill she demonstrated, it was unprecedented for anyone, let alone a woman at that time. Her solo transatlantic flight in 1932, for instance, that wasn't just another flight across the pond. She became the first woman to achieve that incredible solo feat.
Right. Just 5 years after Lindbergh.
Exactly. And you have to put this in context. Consider the era. Aviation was still incredibly nascent, really dangerous, and just overwhelmingly dominated by men.
Yeah.
Instruments were rudimentary, weather forecasting was primitive, kind of guesswork sometimes, and navigation.
No.
Well, it was more of an art form, not an exact science like today.
So just surviving was a big deal.
Surviving such a journey was a triumph in itself. But to do it alone, as a woman, that shattered preconceived notions. It instantly elevated her to this symbol of global inspiration.
That's such a critical point.
Oh.
It wasn't just about one single achievement. She kept pushing. She continually pushed the envelope, didn't she?
She did.
Just 3 years later, 1935, she takes on another astonishing solo journey. Flying from Hawaii to the U.S. mainland, California.
Another incredibly dangerous route.
Right. This wasn't just a repeat performance. It was another incredible demonstration of her, unparalleled skill and courage. That route, 2,400 miles or so across open ocean?
Yeah, 2,408 miles, notoriously dangerous. It had actually claimed the lives of several male pilots who tried it before her.
So her success there really cemented her reputation and proved that transatlantic flight wasn't some kind of fluke, right? It was testament to this profound capability and just unwavering determination.
And that continuous string of groundbreaking successes, it tapped into something really powerful culturally. Her achievements resonated far beyond just the technical marvel of flight.
How so?
Well, they spoke to the human spirit, aspiration, progress. The insights here are pretty clear. These weren't just feats of engineering or navigation, though they were that too. They were profound acts of will. She must have drawn upon this incredible reservoir of personal qualities. A fierce, almost obsessive determination, a meticulous skill developed through countless hours of practice, and a courage that let her confront the very real, often fatal dangers of early aviation head-on.
Yeah.
And these qualities, amplified by an era that was kind of desperate for heroes, they captivated the public imagination. She became this beacon of possibility, challenging gender stereotypes in a world that was changing really rapidly.
And it's precisely that relentless drive, that pushing the envelope quality, that leads us right to her ultimate, most audacious dream.
Around the world flight.
Exactly. Turning now to her ambitious attempt to circumnavigate the globe in 1937. This wasn't just another flight. It was conceived as a global statement, right? A definitive push into the unknown.
It really was.
She had already embarked on this incredible journey. Departed from Oakland, California, meticulously traversing vast continents, South America, Africa, Asia. She gets to Lae, New Guinea, having already covered an astounding 22,000 miles.
Just think about that distance
Right.
in that aircraft. It's staggering, especially given the technology of the time. So what made this final leg, this Pacific crossing, so incredibly audacious compared to everything she'd already done?
Yeah, the journey to Lae had already been a monumental undertaking, no question. But in many ways, it was just a prelude to the real test. The true challenge, the most daunting leg, lay ahead. 7,000 miles across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Pacific Ocean.
Just water, nothing else.
Pretty much. This segment presented an entirely different scale of risk compared to flying over land, where you at least have landmarks, potential emergency landing spots.
Right.
As she prepared for that final daunting leg, the obstacles looming largest were, well, multifactorial. You had the notoriously unpredictable weather systems of the equatorial Pacific, capable of turning clear skies into torrential storms, just like that. And then there was the ever-present threat of mechanical issues, which could easily crop up after flying 22,000 miles far, far from any proper repair facility.
Yeah, wear and tear. Exactly. And of course, the inherent human factor. The relentless fatigue of flying for hours and hours, the immense pressure, and the potential for just one small error in judgment, one miscalculation, to have catastrophic consequences in such an isolated environment.
Any one of those could doom the flight.
Absolutely. Any one of them could quickly tip the balance from success to disaster.
That brings us to a really critical decision point in the planning, maybe one of the most critical. As the flight progressed, the choice of Howland Island as the refueling stop becomes absolutely pivotal.
It does.
I mean, you look it up on a map. It was literally a speck in the ocean.
Yeah.
What is it, 2 miles long, half a mile wide? Something like that.
Tiny, barely visible from the air, even if you were right over it.
Trying to locate it was like searching for a needle in the biggest, emptiest haystack imaginable.
Yeah.
So the question is why? Why choose such a minuscule dot for such a crucial operation when the margins for error were already so vanishingly small?
It's a great question, and the challenge of finding Howland Island was just profoundly amplified by the limitations of 1930s navigation technology.
Right, let's talk about that.
There was no modern GPS, obviously, no radar systems to guide them in. Pilots back then relied heavily on celestial navigation.
Using the sun and stars.
Exactly. Taking precise angular measurements with a sextant, then consulting complex tables to calculate their position. This method, while it could be quite accurate in clear conditions, well, it became virtually impossible with overcast skies obscuring those critical celestial markers.
Which is common over the Pacific.
Very common. They also used primitive radio signals, direction finding, but these were largely line of sight and highly susceptible to atmospheric interference, static, fading in and out.
Unreliable.
Highly unreliable. And then there was dead reckoning. Calculating position based on their last known fix, their speed, their course, elapsed time.
Kind of like educated guessing?
It is, and the problem with dead reckoning is that any small error, maybe an unpredicted wind shift, a slight compass deviation, it would just compound over hours and hours, leading to potentially significant inaccuracies.
So they're flying blind essentially for large stretches.
To a degree, yes. The insight here is that each of these methods had inherent vulnerabilities. It wasn't like today where you have multiple redundant systems. They had these few methods, and if one failed or conditions weren't right, it created this cumulative risk that modern aviators just don't face.
Okay, so navigation is incredibly challenging. And then you layer on top of that the absolutely crucial role of fuel management.
Critical.
Her plane, the Lockheed Electra 10E, which was, state-of-the-art for its time, it had these custom-fitted tanks holding about 1,100 gallons of fuel.
A huge amount, but needed for the distance.
Right, because that flight from Lae, New Guinea to Howland Island was 2,556 miles. It was anticipated to last approximately 20 hours. And presumably, every single drop of fuel was meticulously calculated for that precise journey with very, very little margin left over.
The razor-thin margin for error in those fuel calculations is a critical insight. It highlights the inherent dangers of these pioneering long-distance flights. Consider this. even slight, unexpected headwinds.
Yeah?
Say a consistent 10-knot headwind blowing against them for several hours. That could burn an entire extra hour's worth of fuel easily, beyond what they predicted.
Wow.
Couple that with maybe minor navigational miscalculations that subtly lengthen their flight path, or adverse weather forcing them off course, or maybe to fly at higher altitudes to find clearer air, which uses more fuel.
Yeah.
And suddenly that meticulously planned fuel margin just evaporates. It's gone. Such variables could quickly tip the balance from anticipated success to an unfolding crisis, leaving them with critically low fuel, potentially hundreds of miles away from their tiny target.
And then we have those desperate, fragmented messages, those final transmissions that just whisper volumes about the unfolding drama in that cockpit. What do those urgent pleas truly reveal about the rapidly deteriorating situation? We know about her increasingly desperate calls, "We must be on you but cannot see you,"
Yeah.
"Gas is running low." I mean, those words are just stark. They indicate a growing desperation, a chilling awareness that they were in profound trouble, adrift somewhere in that vastness.
And her final recorded words, received at 8:43 a.m. on July 10, 1937, were, "We are on the line 157-337.
Okay, what does that mean? On the line, 157-337.
This statement offers a crucial, albeit incomplete, clue. For aviators, then, being on the line 157-337 meant they believed they were somewhere along a specific line of position radiating out from Howland Island, likely obtained through radio direction finding bearing from the Coast Guard cutter Itasca waiting there.
So they knew their direction from the island, but not how far.
Exactly. They knew they were on that line, running northwest, 337 degrees, or southeast, 157 degrees from Howland, but not their precise distance along it. So what do these words reveal about her final moments? Well, to me, they suggest a determined resolve. A professional pilot trying to communicate their position until the very end, even amidst dire circumstances, rather than outright panic.
Okay, still trying to solve the problem.
Right. Yet, you have these compounding factors. Like, we know there were extensive overcast conditions reported, making visual contact with Howland utterly impossible, even if they were close. Or potential sudden radio malfunctions, maybe antenna problems, maybe power issues that made communication sporadic, unreliable, difficult for the Itasca to get a solid fix on them. All of this amplified the peril.
So that final message.
The insight here is that while 157-337 was a vital piece of information, without an accompanying reciprocal bearing from another station or a clear indication of distance, it was just a fragment. Lost in the increasing static and chaos, a last-ditch effort that sadly wasn't understood or perhaps couldn't be triangulated in time.
Let's reflect more deeply on Amelia Earhart herself for a moment. If she so powerfully embodied progress and empowerment for women, how did this particular flight, this incredibly public high-stakes flight, how did it mirror and maybe amplify those ideals for a global audience, especially back in the 1930s?
Yeah, that's important.
She wasn't just flying for herself, was she? She was consciously or maybe unconsciously carrying the hopes and expectations of so many people.
Absolutely. Her motivations were undoubtedly complex. A confluence of personal drive and, I think, a sense of public responsibility.
So what do you think truly drove her personally? Was it primarily an ambition for glory, for fame? Was it the pure, unadulterated thrill of adventure? Or maybe a deeper, more profound need to prove something to a skeptical world, particularly as a woman daring to step so far outside the expected roles?
It was likely a mix of all those things. She was often attributed with the philosophy that adventure was worthwhile in itself, that belief that pushing boundaries held intrinsic value. And that guiding philosophy probably profoundly influenced her choices, her mindset on such a perilous journey. Maybe making her more inclined to embrace calculated risks for the sake of exploration and discovery, rather than solely for fame or records.
So it wasn't just about breaking records.
I don't think so, not entirely. It was also about demonstrating the limits of human capability. And importantly, in a society where women's roles were still very rigidly defined, her very presence in that cockpit, attempting to circle the globe, was a radical statement in itself.
Yeah.
It resonated as this powerful symbol of independence, competence, a refusal to be confined by traditional expectations. It must have inspired countless women, and men too, to dream beyond their perceived boundaries.
But you can only imagine the personal cost involved, the intense pressure, the pre-flight rituals she must have meticulously undertaken, checking instruments over and over, going over charts with Noonan and, the heartfelt farewells to loved ones, knowing the immense risks involved. What personal sacrifices do you think underpin such bold pursuits? Not just for her then, But for explorers even now, the sheer mental and physical toll, the long stretches away from family, the constant pressure of public expectation, it's a heavy burden to bear.
It really is. And the cultural context of the 1930s is just crucial here. Aviation truly was a frontier then, much like, say, space exploration is today, or maybe deep sea exploration.
Right, the cutting edge.
Exactly. The public fascination with Earhart, meticulously fueled by newspapers and radio broadcasts tracking her every move, added this immense layer of pressure. This wasn't just a private endeavor, it was a national, even a global event.
Everyone was watching.
Everyone was watching. And this public scrutiny could have potentially influenced her judgment. Maybe it bolstered her determination to succeed against all odds. Maybe it pushed her to continue when others might have opted for more caution. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
We see clear parallels, though, with modern explorers, astronauts venturing into deep space, deep-sea divers plunging into the abyss. Their vanishing acts into the unknown, where communication is tenuous and rescue is nearly impossible, carry that same immense weight of expectation and personal sacrifice.
It's a good point. It reminds us that even today, when technology has advanced so much, the human element, that will to explore, remains right at the heart of such daring endeavors.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's broaden our view a bit and talk about the actual aircraft and the partnership within it. Her plane, the Lockheed Electra 10E, as you said, cutting edge for its time. It had custom modifications specifically engineered for this monumental journey.
Right. Extra fuel tanks, structural reinforcements.
Exactly. How do these technical adjustments highlight the ingenuity required for such a pioneering flight? A testament to early aeronautical engineering, maybe, but also perhaps an early indicator of ambition pushing technology right to its absolute limits.
Both, I think. The Lockheed Electra 10E was indeed a marvel of engineering for 1937. Its features twin engines for reliability over water. Its potential long-range capabilities were absolutely crucial for the vast distances she was attempting to cover. But a significant limitation was its relatively primitive radio system and its limited range. The insight here, perhaps, is that these inherent technical limits often mirror broader themes of human ambition, sometimes outpacing the available technology.
How so with the radio?
While their primary radio was largely line of sight for voice communication, meaning that beyond a certain horizon, maybe a couple hundred miles at best, depending on altitude, they were essentially broadcasting into an empty void, hoping someone like the Itasca could pick up their faint static-ridden signals.
So no constant contact.
No. Not like today. Without reliable long-range radio communication or the ability to easily triangulate their exact position from multiple ground stations, their lifeline back to the world was incredibly fragile. This vulnerability made them profoundly reliant on visual navigation, dead reckoning, and hope rather than constant, reliable contact.
And then, of course, there was her navigator, Fred Noonan. He wasn't just along for the ride. He was an indispensable, highly experienced component of this journey.
Absolutely critical.
His expertise in celestial navigation, likely honed from years at sea as a ship's navigator, was absolutely vital for trying to find those tiny islands in the vast Pacific.
Pat Am veteran, too. Lots of Pacific experience.
Right. Their partnership, presumably built on trust and mutual respect, was really the backbone of this expedition.
Yeah.
So what happens? What happens when that fundamental trust between pilot and navigator is tested to its absolute limit? Maybe by dwindling fuel, unclear radio signals, or just the agonizing inability to spot unseen land after hours and hours of flying over a featureless ocean.
You can almost hear those final cockpit conversations, can't you? Fraught with this terrible, quiet tension. The hushed discussions of fuel gauges dipping perilously low, the desperate, constant scans of the horizon for any sign of land, any break in the clouds, the quiet intensity as they tried to make sense of the static-filled radio signals, maybe arguing about which interpretation was right.
The stress must have been immense.
Immense! The emotions filling that small space must have been overwhelming. Intense focus on the instruments, surely mounting fear as the grim reality of their situation set in, but also, you'd hope, an unyielding resolve to find a solution, to make that tiny island appear.
It really underscores the human element.
It does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, such partnerships, forged under extreme duress, profoundly underscore the critical human element in exploration. After all, no truly monumental adventure is ever undertaken solo, even if one person is the pilot. It requires profound teamwork, reliance on one another's skills, and a shared will to survive. Noonan's specific expertise, using stars relative to a horizon, was incredibly difficult in a moving airplane, especially with cloud cover. Their teamwork was everything.
Let's delve even deeper now, beyond the mechanics and the crew. Let's question the intricacies of the flight plan itself. This wasn't just a simple point-to-point race across the globe, was it?
No, not all.
The journey included meticulously planned stops in some pretty exotic locales. It fostered cultural encounters along the way, almost like a goodwill tour element. It seemed carefully designed to showcase global travel and connection. What added enrichment did those stops bring to her narrative, to the world's understanding of global travel and different cultures at that time? And maybe conversely, how do they add layers of complexity to an already incredibly challenging itinerary?
Well, the initial flight plan involved incredibly precise fuel calculations, as we discussed. But as we know, so many variables existed that could just throw those calculations completely off balance.
Like what?
Consider, for instance, how fluctuating wind speeds, even a small difference from predicted headwinds or tailwinds over thousands of miles, could dramatically alter fuel consumption. Unexpected temperature changes at altitude could affect engine performance. Even subtle shifts in cargo weight due to equipment or supplies consumed or added along the way could alter those carefully laid equations. It turned a precise plan into, well, a precarious gamble.
So the margin for error was basically non-existent.
Pretty much. The crucial insight here is the slim, unforgiving margin for error built into that plan. Every deviation, no matter how minor it seemed at the time, compounded down the line. This understanding gives us critical lessons in precision, adaptability, and risk assessment for any complex undertaking. Their lives literally depended on the accuracy of their predictions and their ability to adapt in real time.
Imagine that dawn takeoff from Ley, New Guinea. The roar of the twin engines shaking the ground, the wheels lifting off into the morning sky, full of promise and the world's hopes riding with them.
A poignant image.
What sense of finality, perhaps unnoticed at the time, might have lingered in that moment, as her plane was last seen by human eyes on the ground before just disappearing into the vast Pacific?
It's hard not to look back with hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah. As we probe these questions, you really consider how this profound promise of triumph, this almost completed global journey, teetered on the very edge of tragedy. It perfectly sets the stage for the desperate search that followed. So the expected arrival time at Howland Island comes and goes. Silence. That initial optimism must have quickly curdled into something far more chilling. The beginning of one of history's most extensive and ultimately most frustrating searches.
Yeah.
What do you envision in those tense, agonizing hours immediately after her disappearance? You've got the support vessel, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca, stationed near Howland, scanning the horizons, listening frantically for any signal.
Imagine being on that ship.
Right. What's it like to wait for a plane that just never arrives, when every single passing minute feels like an eternity, and the vastness all around you seems to just swallow all hope?
The psychological toll of that waiting period must have been immense. It brings us to a crucial insight. Just consider the sheer scale of the environment they were operating in. An ocean spanning millions of square miles, its relentless waves concealing countless secrets.
It's hard to even comprehend that scale.
It is. Why might hope fade so rapidly amid such immense and unforgiving vastness? Well, every passing hour meant a larger potential search area, an exponentially expanding circle of ocean to cover. In such a boundless expanse, finding a small aircraft, or even its wreckage, becomes an almost mathematically impossible task, especially back then, and that crushing reality sets in very, very quickly.
That creeping dread then escalated into this massive, truly unprecedented search effort. Let's examine the resources that were mobilized. We're talking about an operation costing millions in today's terms,
A huge sum for the time.
involving naval ships, aircraft carriers even, aircraft from both the U.S. Navy and the Coast Guard. Why deploy such immense military might for one missing plane? Even if it was carrying a national hero like Amelia Earhart, it was an extraordinary commitment.
It was. It reflected her status, but also the mystery and the desire to find her.
Yet the brutal reality was that searching millions of square miles of ocean with just ships relying on eyeballs and maybe some primitive direction finding, it was tragically inadequate. What made 1930s technology, without radar, without GPS, without satellite imagery, so utterly ill-equipped for a search of this magnitude?
The contrast with modern search capabilities is just stark. In the 1930s, searching the ocean meant visual observation from ships and low-flying aircraft. That's basically it.
Just looking.
Just looking. There was no radar to detect objects beyond the line of sight. No GPS for precise location tracking of search vessels or potential debris fields. No satellite imagery to scan vast areas from above. And certainly no sophisticated sonar to map the deep ocean floor where wreckage might lie.
So they were relying on luck.
Essentially, yes, luck and relentless, tireless human effort. The insight here is that despite the immense resources thrown at it, despite the dedicated personnel, futility often reigned because of these pervasive environmental factors.
Like the ocean itself fighting back.
Exactly. Powerful, unpredictable ocean currents could disperse wreckage rapidly across thousands of miles. Sudden violent storms could hamper visibility for days, making aerial searches impossible. And of course, the sheer, overwhelming vastness of the distances involved simply meant that the odds of stumbling upon anything were infinitesimal. These natural forces were just too powerful, too immense for the technology of the day to overcome.
And the human toll of all this. It must have been staggering. The official search operations eventually ceased after weeks, yielding absolutely nothing concrete.
Heartbreaking.
Think about the profound human cost. Families clinging to every fragment of hope in the news reports. The public riveted by headlines, experiencing this kind of collective grief and disbelief. What blend of emotions, hope, despair, denial, do you think gripped her family, particularly her husband, George Putnam, during that endless wait? He famously went on to fund private searches long after the official efforts ended.
He did, several of them.
What drives someone to keep looking against all odds like that, pouring personal resources into what seems like an impossible quest, even when the rest of the world has essentially given up hope?
George Putnam's unwavering dedication really underscores a powerful human truth, doesn't it? The deep need for closure, the refusal to accept an ambiguous ending, especially for someone you love.
Yeah.
The official declaration of her presumed death, which was a legal necessity for estates and insurance and so on, came much later, not immediately after the search ended.
Why the delay, do you think?
Well, that delay wasn't just bureaucratic red tape. I think it reflected that enduring, tenacious grip of lingering hope. For a time, the possibility, however slim, that they might still be found alive somewhere, maybe stranded on a remote island, that possibility persisted in the public consciousness and, even more intensely, within her immediate circle. It just highlights how desperately the human mind seeks answers, seeks resolution, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of loss.
That then leads to a critical question, maybe, for search and rescue operations, both then and now. Why did the official search efforts stop after those initial weeks, having yielded nothing definitive? Was it purely about exhausted resources? Was even the overwhelming sense of futility setting in? Or just a combination of both factors, reaching a critical point where continued effort became unsustainable?
It was undeniably a confluence of factors. Resources were finite, even for the U.S. Navy. And the sheer scale of the search, with absolutely no definitive clues emerging, made it untenable to continue indefinitely at that level of intensity.
Right.
The overwhelming sense of futility, coupled with the immense logistical hurdles, things like refueling search planes in remote Pacific areas, navigating unpredictable weather that constantly hampered visibility. All of it just underscored nature's overwhelming dominance over even the most determined human efforts.
But how does that compare to today?
Well, a significant insight here, especially if you compare those efforts to modern searches for lost flights, think about the relentless hunt for MH370 is just how far advanced technologies have come.
Yeah.
We now have satellite imagery capable of spotting small objects. We have sophisticated multi-beam sonar that can map the ocean floor in incredible detail. We have drones, autonomous underwater vehicles capable of vast reconnaissance. These tools vastly alter the potential outcomes by enabling much more targeted and efficient searches.
But some things haven't changed.
Exactly. What fundamental challenges of searching the deep ocean haven't changed at all? Well, the ocean's immense depths, its powerful, unpredictable currents, and its sheer overwhelming size. Those remain formidable adversaries, even for 21st century technology. This profound frustration and futility from the Earhart search, though, inevitably led to a significant evolution of search and rescue protocols over the decades, directly influencing the international standards and technologies used today. Lessons were learned, albeit the hard way.
Even amidst all that despair and the growing sense of futility back then, there were these tantalizing reports, weren't there? Reports of faint radio signals being picked up after her official disappearance.
Yes, the post-loss signals. Very controversial.
It's such a tantalizing detail. If technology was so primitive then, what innovations, even speculative ones, could have definitively pivoted the search if those signals had been real? Could they have been genuine, desperate cries for help? Or were they simply wishful hoaxes, maybe echoes of static and hope being misinterpreted in the chaos and desperation?
It's one of the enduring sub-mysteries.
And crucially, how would we go about verifying such signals today with our current technology? Could we decipher faint whispers from the past, filter out nearly 90 years of noise, and potentially pinpoint a source if they were real?
Those reported signals, though ultimately unverified and highly debated, they highlight the intense desperation of the time, both for Earhart potentially and for those listening. The insight here is that and it's a big if we could have definitively verified or debunked those signals back then, it would have fundamentally changed the entire trajectory of the search. Imagine if advanced digital signal processing, which we have today, could have been applied to whatever faint recordings might have existed from 1937. Maybe we could filter out static, identify voice patterns, analyze the signal characteristics, perhaps even triangulate a rough location based on multiple reports.
That would have been huge.
It would have been a game changer. Such a breakthrough would have provided a concrete target area, completely altering our understanding of her fate. Without that verification, though, the signals remain just a frustrating, ambiguous footnote, fueling speculation and theories for decades, rather than informing the actual search efforts at the time.
Ultimately, then, what do these massive failed searches, not just Earhart's, but others too, what do they teach us about the enduring limits of human endeavor? And maybe about the immense, unyielding power of nature? How does this profound historical lesson continue to inform our current and future exploration challenges, whether we're talking about deep space, the polar regions, or the deepest parts of our own ocean floor?
The profound frustration of such a vast, empty search, yielding no definitive answers, it really highlights a key aspect of human psychology, I think. The mind abhors a vacuum.
Right. We need answers.
We crave explanations. And when none are forthcoming from the official investigation, speculation rushes in to fill that void. This leads us directly, inevitably, to our next area of inquiry: the compelling, persistent, and often controversial theories about what truly happened to Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan.
Okay, now we delve into the part everyone finds fascinating. The most prominent theories that have captivated imaginations for decades, each one offering a distinct narrative for Amelia Earhart's disappearance. So let me ask you first, what makes a mystery theory truly compelling to you personally? Is it the sheer strength of the evidence, the logical consistency, or is it sometimes just the sheer allure of the narrative itself, the space it leaves for imagination?
That's a good question. For me, it has to be grounded in some plausible evidence, but the narrative pull is undeniably strong in cases like this. Today, we'll outline the main scenarios people talk about: the straightforward crash and sink theory, the more hopeful island survival theory, and then the much more controversial capture theory.
And listeners should weigh them up.
Exactly. As we explore each of these, I really encourage you, the listener, to actively weigh its plausibility. Try to rigorously consider the context of the time, the technology, the geopolitics, and also acknowledge that enduring human desire for a definitive answer, even when one proves stubbornly elusive. It's about critical thinking, not just latching on to the most dramatic story.
Okay, let's begin with the crash and sink hypothesis. This is often considered the simplest, the most direct, and maybe statistically the most likely explanation. Fuel exhaustion leads to a ditching somewhere in the vast Pacific Ocean. End of story.
Why is this theory so prevalent? Why does it feel like the default explanation for so many official accounts and researchers? Well, its prevalence largely stems from the fact that it aligns most closely with her own final communications. The most compelling evidence for it comes directly from her urgent messages about being unable to see Howland, and crucially, gas is running low.
Right. That seems pretty definitive.
It strongly suggests fuel exhaustion was, at the very least, an imminent and critical factor. So do those messages definitively seal this fate in your mind? Or is there still room for doubt, even with those words?
Well, that's the thing. While her final messages certainly point strongly towards fuel exhaustion as a primary factor,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the only contributing factor that could have led to a crash and sink scenario, right?
Absolutely. You could have had those unexpected headwinds burning through fuel faster than anticipated. You could have had subtle navigational errors that simply extended their flight path beyond their fuel range. Or maybe unforeseen mechanical failures. Even a small, unrecoverable issue in one of the engines after flying 22,000 miles could have potentially led to a loss of altitude and a controlled or uncontrolled ditching.
But the big sticking point.
The big sticking point, the crucial, unsettling detail, is the complete absence of any definitively identified wreckage after all this time. Despite numerous searches, including recent high-tech ones, this leads to a critical insight, or rather, a critical question. Without any confirmed wreckage, how certain can we truly be of a crash and sink scenario? It remains the most probable, perhaps, but not proven.
Okay, so if they did crash and sink, what would that actually look like? If we consider the bigger picture, what do we know about the structural integrity of her plane, that Lockheed Electra, upon impact with water?
Yeah, historical accounts and engineering analyses suggest that while it was a robust aircraft for its day, a high-speed ditching into potentially choppy Pacific waters would likely cause it to break apart relatively quickly.
So it wouldn't just float there.
Probably not for long, if at all intact. Would it have floated briefly, maybe offering a chance for her and Noonan to escape, deploy a life raft if they had one easily accessible? Possibly. Or would it have sunk swiftly, perhaps in pieces, into the depths? That seems more likely given the forces involved.
And the depths out there are incredible.
Absolutely. Ocean depths in the Central Pacific can easily be thousands upon thousands of feet. The deepest parts of the likely search area are over 18,000 feet deep. That environment. Well, it could either preserve wreckage remarkably well in cold anoxic conditions, or utterly destroy it through immense pressure and the slow, corrosive effects of salt water over decades.
So finding it is needle in a haystack territory.
Even more so. If we were searching for wreckage today, what modern tools offer the best hope? Things like advanced, deep-towed submersibles equipped with high-resolution side-scan sonar, or maybe autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, that can systematically map vast swaths of the ocean floor. These promise the greatest potential breakthroughs in pinpointing debris fields. But the challenge remains immense, just due to the sheer area involved and the extreme depths.
Okay, so that's crash and sink. Let's move to the next major theory, which is perhaps more hopeful, certainly more dramatic, the island survival theory.
The castaway scenario.
Exactly. What if they somehow didn't crash immediately? What if they managed to find and land on a remote, uninhabited atoll? Like, specifically, one in the Phoenix group, maybe Nikomaro, which used to be called Gardner Island. And what if they lived as castaways for a period? Days, weeks, maybe even months.
This theory is fueled by some intriguing, albeit, again, controversial clues and artifacts. You mentioned those reported post-disappearance radio signals earlier. Faint, unverified, but some researchers believe they could have come from the Electra's radio operating on the ground for a short time.
Right, and the physical evidence on Nikomaro.
Well, then there are the archaeological finds on Nikomaro itself. It's a tiny, uninhabited coral atoll. Expeditions there, particularly by TIGHAR, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, have found artifacts. Things like old jars, pieces of glass that resemble parts of cosmetic containers from the 1930s, potential bone fragments.
Bone fragment, human.
Possibly human. Analysis has been inconclusive or debated, and there have been digs uncovering what appear to be campfire remnants, suggesting perhaps a prolonged stay by castaways, not just a brief visit by passing sailors.
So, could she and Noonan have truly survived for weeks or even months as castaways on such a desolate island? What incredible survival skills would they have needed?
They would have needed everything. Fire-making skills, the ability to forage for food from the sparse vegetation, maybe coconuts, birds, finding and purifying fresh water, likely from rain catchments they'd have to build, perhaps fishing, if they could fashion tools, all while battling the elements, the heat, insects, potential injury, and just the crushing psychological toll of extreme isolation.
It sounds incredibly difficult.
Extremely. But the Nikomaro hypothesis remains compelling precisely because of these archaeological hints, however ambiguous they might be. Yet, despite the intriguing evidence, why hasn't definitive, undeniable proof emerged? A piece of the plane with a serial number, a clearly identifiable personal effect.
Yeah, the smoking gun.
Exactly. This brings us to a crucial insight, or maybe a dilemma. Is the lack of definitive proof due to nature's relentless erasure? Waves, tides, storms, coral growth just covering or carrying away all traces over 80-plus years? Or is it perhaps due to our own incorrect assumptions about their precise location or fate? Are we looking in the right place, or maybe misinterpreting what we do find?
What about those bone fragments? Could they ever be identified?
Well, for those bone fragments to be conclusive, you'd need advanced forensic analysis. DNA testing, if any DNA remains after decades in a harsh tropical environment, which is unlikely. Or perhaps detailed morphological analysis comparing them to Earhart's known physical dimensions, but even that is often subjective with fragmentary remains.
And the other artifacts?
Things like navigation tools, pieces of aluminum sheeting found on the island, are they coincidental? Maybe left by earlier inhabitants, shipwreck survivors from other eras, or even WWII personnel who occupied the island later? Or are they key pieces of evidence directly linking Nikomaro to Earhart's flight? That's the ongoing debate.
It's fascinating to think about, though.
Imagine, just for a moment, finding diary entries. or notes scratched onto a piece of metal from such a survival scenario, depicting moments of despair, flickering hope, meticulous planning for rescue. Such finds wouldn't just definitively solve the mystery, they would profoundly humanize this enduring enigma. Give us a true, heartbreaking glimpse into their final, desperate days.
Okay, then there's the third major category. Most controversial theory, the one that adds a layer of international intrigue, espionage, maybe even cover-up, the Japanese capture scenario.
Right. This one has persisted for a long time.
This theory suggests they didn't crash or die on an island, but were somehow detained by foreign powers, specifically by the Japanese, perhaps after accidentally straying into territory controlled by them, like the Marshall Islands, amidst the rising pre-war tensions between the U.S. and Japan in the 1930s. The idea is they were taken prisoner, maybe seen as spies, and possibly died in captivity.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
What fuels these dramatic claims? There are often mentions of alleged sightings by locals on various islands, or even supposed photographs hinting at her presence, or maybe Noonan's, or even the Electra, elsewhere, often on islands held by the Japanese at the time.
The evidence is usually anecdotal or photographic.
But does the idea of a secret reconnaissance mission, which sometimes gets tied into this theory, does that truly fit Amelia Earhart's public persona? Is this daring, independent aviator focused on breaking records and promoting flight? Or does it feel like a forced narrative, maybe a way to add drama where there might simply be tragedy?
That's a key point of skepticism for many.
And why do these kinds of conspiracy theories persist so strongly, often despite a general lack of concrete, verifiable evidence, and sometimes frequent debunkings of the alleged photos and witness accounts? What's the appeal?
The Japanese capture theory certainly resonates with a particular appetite for intrigue, for hidden histories, for government cover-ups, especially given the actual geopolitical climate of the late 1930s, which was incredibly tense. However, critical scrutiny is absolutely vital here. If we connect this to the bigger picture, how plausible was such an espionage scenario really in that specific context? For someone as internationally famous as Amelia Earhart to be on a secret spy mission, and perhaps more importantly, how reliable are witness accounts that often emerge decades after the event, or photographs that have been widely examined and, in many cases, convincingly debunked as misidentifications or showing unrelated people or events?
The evidence seems shaky.
The insight here is that while the idea is undeniably dramatic, the verifiable evidence supporting it is profoundly weak, often non-existent. And if such a capture were true, think about the broader implications. What kind of massive, multi-decade cover-up would be required, not just by Japan, but potentially by the U.S. government as well?
Why would they cover it up?
Exactly. Why would such a secret be so meticulously maintained by Japan for so many decades, especially after World War II, when revealing such information might have had different political implications? The scale of such a cover-up, requiring extraordinary discipline and silence from countless individuals across nations and generations, just makes it seem highly improbable to most serious researchers.
Okay, so we have these three main lines of thinking: crash and sink, island survival, Japanese capture. Broadening our perspective now, as you, the listener, consider these theories. Which one resonates most with your own logic, and why? What specific piece of evidence, or maybe the compelling lack of evidence for other theories, would truly sway your judgment, make you lean definitively one way or another?
And it's important to remember, too, that beyond these three main theories, there are other, perhaps less discussed, alternatives. Things like simply drifting much farther than anticipated after a crash, ending up on distant, uninhabited shores far from the main search areas. Or perhaps specific mechanical catastrophes distinct from just running out of fuel, maybe a catastrophic engine failure, a fire, something that left them completely unable to communicate their position before impact.
Right, and we bring our own biases too.
We absolutely do. A crucial insight is to try and recognize how our own biases might influence which theories we prefer. Do we have a romanticism for her adventure, a desire for a dramatic, conclusive story, maybe even a survival story? Or do we have a natural skepticism towards unproven claims and conspiracies? This self-awareness is really key to attempting an objective analysis of the available facts.
So looking forward, what fresh evidence would be truly compelling enough to sway current preferences, to really shift the balance of probability?
Well, perhaps recently revisited radio signals, analyzed with cutting-edge digital enhancement and AI revealing something previously missed, Or maybe new, unambiguous sonar anomalies discovered during comprehensive ocean floor scans in high probability areas. That's the kind of thing researchers are looking for.
And we always have to consider time.
Yes. Another insight to always keep in mind is how the relentless factors of time and environment, those powerful ocean currents carrying debris thousands of miles, island erosion covering or destroying potential survival sites, the simple degradation of materials in harsh saltwater or tropical conditions, how all these things consistently cloud the truth and make definitive answers so incredibly elusive after nearly a century.
But maybe technology can overcome that.
That's the hope. What modern tools, like that advanced sonar mapping, or maybe AI-driven pattern recognition applied to old data sets or new survey data, might finally be capable of solving this complex puzzle? By sifting through mountains of ambiguous information, maybe identifying subtle patterns the human eyes have missed. This remains the ongoing quest. Hashtag unanswered questions and lingering obsession.
Even with all our discussion today and the diligent efforts of countless researchers over the decades, it's really the what-ifs that truly perpetuate the fascination with Amelia Earhart, isn't it?
Absolutely. The unanswered questions.
What specific puzzles continue to persist and keep this mystery alive almost a century later? Was there, for instance, a critical fuel miscalculation right from the start, or maybe unexpected fuel consumption that drained her reserves much faster than anticipated, leading directly to those desperate final messages?
Or did navigation errors occur? Perhaps those critical cloudy skies completely obscured vital stars for hours on end, causing severe disorientation over that featureless, immense ocean. How far off course could they have gotten?
And the radio issues. What definitive role did radio failures or inconsistencies play? We know there were problems. Were they due to antenna issues, maybe damage during takeoff or flight? Were they on the wrong frequencies? Or did the Itasca have trouble receiving them? Battery failures? Or just unpredictable atmospheric conditions that made reliable two-way communication simply impossible when it mattered most?
When you ponder all these potential breakdowns, what specific scenario do you find most compelling? For many, it's the potential impact of those cloudy skies, rendering celestial navigation, Noonan's primary skill, essentially useless for extended periods. That seems like a really critical vulnerability.
Yeah, the technical what-ifs are indeed compelling because they speak directly to the fragile nature of early aviation technology and techniques. What's particularly intriguing, I think, are the reported inconsistencies in the transmissions received by the Itasca. Variations in signal strength over time.
Right. What precisely could account for that? Was it a failing power source on the Electra? A damaged antenna causing intermittent broadcasts only when the plane banked a certain way? Or was it sudden changes in atmospheric interference creating temporary dead zones for radio waves? We just don't know.
And how far off could their initial position estimates have been? And more critically, how would they even try to recalibrate their position in midair with such limited tools as their situation grew more and more desperate?
The true insight here, perhaps, is the potential for a cascade effect. A minor error or a single equipment malfunction in one area, navigation, communication, fuel management, could trigger a chain reaction, compounding the challenge exponentially, making it almost impossible to recover in such a vast, empty expanse.
But fortunately, maybe, evolving technology continues to offer new hope, new possibilities for reopening cold cases like this one. How are new tools changing the game? Things like advanced sonar mapping that can survey huge areas of the ocean floor in unprecedented detail, or maybe DNA analysis if verifiable potential artifacts, like those bone fragments, are ever found again. How are these transforming the ability to revisit old trails and uncover new clues?
The potential of modern technology to finally unlock this mystery is immense. We've seen recent developments, haven't we? Like sonar images emerging from new deep-sea search expeditions that appear to resemble a plane, or at least plane debris, lying on the ocean floor in a plausible area.
Right. Are those clear indicators, though, or could they be, just intriguing illusions, products of pareidolia in the deep sea, where shadows and natural rock formations can easily trick the eye or sonar interpretations?
That's the million-dollar question with sonar images. Verification is key. But could artificial intelligence, AI, or perhaps advanced long-endurance drone technology finally be the breakthrough needed to crack this case wide open?
How would AI help?
Well, consider what specific AI algorithms might be used. You could have machine learning models trained to discern patterns in those old, static-laden radio signal recordings, perhaps filtering out noise and revealing hidden messages, or even identifying unique transmitter characteristics.
Wow.
Or maybe applying AI to sift through terabytes of ocean floor imagery from sonar surveys, automatically flagging anomalies that resemble aircraft wreckage, patterns that human analysts might overlook after hours of staring at screens.
And satellites?
What about reports of satellite anomalies potentially spotting objects? Are these just natural phenomena, sunken ships, geological features? Or could they be actual man-made traces that could offer new, precise leads for future expeditions to investigate? The insight is that these technologies don't just extend our physical vision, they potentially enhance our ability to interpret vast amounts of ambiguous data. They provide hope that a definitive answer, however elusive it's been, might still lie hidden, waiting to be found.
So let's pull back for the final thought. Ultimately, why? Why does Amelia Earhart's story, her promise and her peril, still captivate us so profoundly almost a century after she disappeared? Is it her sheer ambition that resonates with our own dreams? Is it the personal tragedy of her vanishing that touches our empathy? Or is it just that universal human draw to the unknown, that tantalizing puzzle that remains stubbornly unsolved?
It's likely all of the above, isn't it? But this brings us to a crucial final insight, I think. If we connect this to the bigger picture, maybe we can reflect on how unsolved enigmas like hers often serve as mirrors, reflecting our own uncertainties, our own anxieties about the unknown, and our endless innate quest for answers, for meaning in life.
So it's more than just a missing plane.
Much more. Her story isn't just about a lost plane or a vanished aviator. It's about the very nature of human ambition, about resilience in the face of overwhelming odds, and about that universal drive to push boundaries. Her image as a feminist pioneer, a symbol of daring adventure, has continued to be shaped and sustained through generations of media, books, films.
She's an icon.
She remains an enduring icon precisely because her story taps into our deepest desires for exploration and discovery. And it challenges us, even today, to confront the limits of our knowledge, even when those limits are painfully, frustratingly apparent. Hashtag tag outro.
Well, we've taken a truly deep dive today into the promise and the ultimate peril of Amelia Earhart's last flight. It really is a journey filled with unparalleled ambition, daring innovation, and ultimately an enduring, poignant mystery, isn't it?
It truly is.
We've explored the incredible feats that forged her into an icon long before that final flight. We've looked at the audacious scope of her global attempt, the razor-thin margins of 1930s navigation technology, and those desperate, fragmented final messages that still speak volumes across the decades.
And we've wrestled with the profound frustration and futility of those initial searches and carefully weighed the most prominent theories, the crash and sink, the island survival, the controversial capture scenario, each with its own compelling clues maybe, but also undeniable frustrating gaps in evidence.
What's truly fascinating here, as you said, is how her vanishing itself became such an integral, almost mythical part of her legend. Her disappearance has fueled generations of speculation, inspired countless expeditions, all driven by that unyielding human desire for closure, for understanding.
It really is a powerful testament to humanity's relentless drive to push boundaries, doesn't it? To confront the unknown and to never give up on the quest for answers, even when facing the most profound and challenging enigmas.
So as we conclude this deep dive, maybe take a moment to consider, what insights have you personally gained from this exploration into the promise and peril of Amelia Earhart's last flight? And maybe more broadly, what does her enduring mystery ultimately reveal about our own insatiable drive to explore the unknown, to push against the limits of what is possible, even when we're confronted with its most profound, most challenging, and sometimes most tragic questions?